How's it going, guys? I'm Vivi and welcome back to some Jak and Daxter. Well, the thing is, I haven't talked about Jak and Daxter for a while now. Yep, I guess we're back. So, coming from a guy who's played Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper, the thing that hurt my brain the most is the aspect of time travel that got introduced in Jak 2. I'm gonna try my best and try and explain it to you guys how the whole time travel worked in Jak 2. Now, of course, some of you might disagree with the ideas mentioned in the video. If that is the case, leave your own thoughts in the comment section below. But with that being said, guys, let's get started. So let's start with the beginning of Jak 2. I don't know if you guys remember, Samos said, "So this is how it happened."
So this is how it happened.
What is he talking about? He remembers being sent to the past, to Sandover village. Way in the past, before Haven City, 300 years ago we're talking about. Jak, he doesn't remember. When he was sent, he was just a young child. Very young. And Samos himself said he won't remember a thing. Well, actually, the only thing Jak remembers is this light he saw, but that's it. And then we have Cor showing up. The metalheads, they destroy Sandover village. So since Cor showed up, let's focus on this guy. He pops out of the rift gate, the last rift gate. And if I'm not mistaken, this was never explained. His presence, we never understood it. Question is, what is he doing inside the rift gate? There are two scenarios I came up with. Now, scenario number one, I think, is least likely. Scenario number two, in my opinion, makes more sense. Now guys, I'm gonna try and talk slow, cause this whole thing hurts my brain. So here goes. So, scenario number one. Cor, he travels back to the past along with his metalhead army. He comes from a future which we don't know, and I don't think it matters at this point. What I mean by this is he creates the future we see in Jak 2. He created his own universe. But why did he go back to the past? He was trying to look for the last precursor stone, you know, to change history. And eventually what he did, it caused Mar to hide the precursor stone within his tomb. And by going back to the past and changing events, it caused Mar to found Haven City and all that. If that is true, that means that Cor is immortal, we can say. That means he lived for hundreds of years. Now let's go to scenario number two, which is very similar, by the way. He sends his army only, and we still do see the future he created in Jak 2 by doing so. Now he said one phrase.
You cannot hide from me, boy.
What did he mean by "you can't escape me, boy"? Who was he referring to? Jak himself. Cor, he came through the last rift gate, a chance to see the past only, not to travel to the past. Why did he want to see the past? Well, Onin had predicted that a young boy would go back to the past, grow up, go back to the future and face Cor. He wanted to see that for himself. And by the way, in Jak 2, Cor did say, "I'm sure you know," and he said this to Jak, "deep down in your darkest nightmares, we've met before. Remember? Everything's going exactly as planned." He went back to the past and created the universe he wanted, and we did see it in Jak 2. Okay, so in scenario number one, it didn't matter from which future he originated from, but in scenario two, he only peeked into the past. But what future was he from? I think he was from a future where Jak was already born in Haven City, when he was young. Now, Cor had envisioned using old Jak to activate the last precursor stone. And if we go back to his phrase, "we've met before, remember," he was probably talking about his young version. When Cor saw old Jak in Sandover village, he thought he was still pure enough to activate the precursor stone. At that point, Jak was pure. But in the future, he got tainted by dark eco. So since that happened, Cor moved on and set his eyes out for young Jak instead. In his mind, Cor had thought, hey, if I go back to the past and then go back to the future, I might end up in a time where old Jak already sent his younger self into the past. So at that point, Cor had thought that, hey, old Jak is my only option. That's the future I'm gonna end up in. A future where young Jak was already sent to the past. Anyways, how are you guys doing so far, by the way? Does your brain hurt? Probably. With that being said, let's move on. So Cor, he goes back to the past. He doesn't really go to the past, he just sees the past. What happened next when he went back to the future? He slightly altered it, in which young Jak still existed. That is why he said everything's going exactly as planned. And notice when he said to Jak, this is where it all began, from the future. He doesn't know who sent Jak through time. Jak was actually sent when Cor was defeated, so he doesn't know who was the person who sent him to the past. Okay, how does he know that Jak was sent in time to train and come back to face him? Like I said before, Onin had predicted predicted that. So he got curious. He used the last rift gate to peek into the past. He saw Jak and thought, hey, you can't escape from me. I need you, you can't hide. So again, if we go with scenario number 2, Core, he came from a future where young Jak already existed. When he looked into the past, he recognized Jak. Sure, he grew up, but he recognized him. So just to give you guys a summary, the metalheads that got out of the rift gate, they slightly impacted the future, but not so much to ruin his plan. Again, he said everything's going exactly as planned. If he did impact the future at a point that erases Jak's existence, we'd get a paradox. Jak would just disappear. Okay, so before I move on to the next thing, I just want to clear something with you guys. In scenario number 1, I said that Core was immortal, living for hundreds of years. That actually makes sense. I mean, Core actually originates from a faraway past. And in a future where young Jak already existed, he used a time rift to, you know, peek into the past. And by the way, Core was an enemy to the Precursors and Mars, so yes, he did live for hundreds of years. Anyway, how would one describe time travel in Jak 2? It's a pure time loop we're talking about. But there is an exit. Here's a drawing I came up with, which represents time travel in Jak and Daxter. We have a loop. Young Jak, found in Haven City, Jak defeats Core, sends young Jak to the past, grows up, goes to Haven City, and rinse and repeat. It's this endless loop. But when Jak defeats Core, his older version, he remains in Haven City, and we get the events of Jak 3 and Jak X. I know a lot of you are confused right now and are wondering, what did I just watch? I'll give you guys a very quick summary and hopefully it helps. So Core, he comes from a future where young Jak was already born in Haven City. In his mind, by looking into the past, and why did he look into the past, by the way? Because Onan had predicted that Jak would go back to the past, grow up, and go back to the future to face him. With that out of the way, by looking into the future, he thought that he'd only meet Jak after he sent his younger version. You know, once he goes back to the future, and he thought of using him instead. But no, he was fortunate enough to end up at a point where young Jak was still present in Haven City. He decided to use him instead, and at that point he realized that old Jak was tainted with dark eco. It's a time loop, alright? But old Jak, he does live into the future, where Core is defeated. It hurts our brains, I know. I just thought that someone had to try and explain how it worked. The whole time travel thing, it's messy. So, it's a time loop mixed with destiny. Samos, at the end of Jak 2, he said that young Jak was destined to go back to Sandover village. The gang were about to go back to the past, but Samos stopped them. He told them to send young Samos and young Jak instead. That was their destiny. Now, this whole thing reminds me of Sly Cooper being sent to the past, unintentionally triggering the main villain and all that. Like Sly Cooper, he was destined to end up in ancient Egypt. It's off topic, I know. I just wanted to point that out for those of you who watched my Sly Cooper videos. Now, if these characters never followed their destiny, going back to the past, then the old versions of the characters would just fade away, because they never went back in time to grow up and come to the future. That never would have happened. The same thing goes for Samos, the life seed. He gave his young self the life seed, you know, to take it with him to the past, to become the Green Sage. If that wasn't done, then Samos wouldn't have become the Green Sage. In short, none of these things would have happened. Oh, and guys, don't forget about the Precursor artifact, which had preset coordinates to the future. And also, same thing goes for the Heart of Mar, which originates from Haven City. So again, this time loop, it's all destiny. So with that being said, I guess this is pretty much it for the video. Like I said, guys, I tried explaining what I understood. If you disagree with some ideas mentioned, share your own thoughts in the comment section below. So yep, as usual, I've been VV, and thank you for watching.